New reporting this week on accused Idaho murderer Bryan Kohberger and his life of flying under the radar before allegedly murdering the 4 victims in Idaho. We now know a lot more about his backstory. After graduating from Pleasant Valley High School in Pennsylvania's Pocono Mountains in 2013, he would only venture about 35 miles to begin his college career. It's here at DeSales University in the Lehigh Valley where Kohberger would spend a significant portion of his 20s.
DeSales is kind of its own sort of campus outside of Bethlehem in a more rural area surrounded by a lot of cornfields and small neighborhoods.
In fact, it was the sort of small campus, less than 5,000 students, where a student could typically not enjoy the anonymity that one might be able to at nearby universities like Penn State. But Kohberger may have been the exception, as one former classmate remembered.
It's a very small school in a cornfield, so if you go there, you know most of the people within your study and pretty much everyone that goes to the school, and he was not known.
Known or not, Bryan Kohberger would wind up getting both his undergraduate and a graduate degree at DeSales in the studies of psychology and criminology, and that's where he came in contact with classmate Josh Ferraro, his future lab partner, who said this about Kohberger.
At that time, I would have never said, oh yeah, that guy would do something like this. He may have been a little odd or a little off, but other than that, you'd never expect someone to be allegedly part of a quadruple homicide, ever.
And when Kohberger transitioned from undergraduate to graduate student at DeSales, he also switched from a major in psychology to a focus on criminal justice. While he had no official criminal record during his time as an undergrad and grad student, according to multiple reports, Kohberger would spend a lot of time at a bar called the Seven Sirens Brewing Company. According to interviews, he made multiple women uncomfortable to a point where a record of his interactions were kept, as his odd behavior was a concern to the staff. Now, being the creepy guy in a bar doesn't make him a killer, but the evidence that has come out was enough to change his former lab partner's mind.
God forbid if he didn't do it, great, but all the signs point to that he did. Unless this guy was miraculously set up, which is like a 1 in a billion chance, no one cares enough about Bryan Kohberger to set him up.
In fact, Ferraro goes on to say that he thinks their specific studies, what they studied, played a role in Kohberger's actions.
The course that I took that stands out is psychological sleuthing, where you basically enter the mind of a killer. She would give you sheets, and basically the sheets would denote and detail a crime. However, you wouldn't know who did what per se or where this was, but you'd have to, it was a group thing, so you'd get partnered up or in groups, and you would go through these activities and basically come up with a theory or a thesis.
And DeSales is known for its criminology studies.
They have an entire house, they call it the crime scene house, that is used for simulations for crime scene investigation or collecting evidence or crime scene photography or responding to other emergencies.
But on top of all of that, Bryan Kohberger's studies of the criminal mind didn't end at DeSales. Just months later, he'd moved cross-country and began his PhD studies at Washington State University. He'd even receive an appointment as a teaching assistant during the fall, the 2022 semester, but he reportedly be fired from that job over, quote, behavioral problems and having a sexist attitude towards women. Joining us now is Sierra Gillespie, a reporter for the Law and Crime Network, who did a terrific in-depth story, which uncovered a lot of new information about Kohberger's background. And back with us is Jesse Weber. Sierra, let me start with you. You spent a lot of time digging into his background. What surprised you most?
I think the most interesting thing about Bryan Kohberger is that he flew under the radar. So a lot of the people that I spoke with said that when they first heard the name Bryan Kohberger, when he was named a suspect in these murders, they thought, that name's kind of familiar to me, but who is that? How do I know him? Kohberger didn't really make a big mark on a lot of people when they had to go back into their memories from years ago and think, oh, I knew that guy. What they were thinking is that he was kind of odd. He was kind of off. He kept to himself. A lot of people told me that he was a loner throughout his entire collegiate studies. So that's something that's really interesting now that we're learning more about him.
So he's studying criminology at DeSales, and then he's studying it more at the University of Washington?
That is correct. So he studied his undergraduate and graduate degrees at DeSales, which really, you heard it there, has a very robust criminal justice program with some of the world-renowned professors. He studied there and then was working on his PhD in Washington. So really doubling down on learning more about this field.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.